Welcome to week 4 of Bio 300. Our focus this week is stress, and our scripture for this week is Luke 12:22. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear." So let's begin with the definition of stress, because there are many definitions for this word out there in use in general practice. So it's important to focus on what the term means from a health point of view. And what it means from a health point of view is the biological response to noxious, demanding, or unpleasant stimuli or conditions. The key to this definition is that what stresses us, the stimulus itself, whatever it is not stress. The stimulus is the stressor. Stress is the biological response to whatever is stressing us. So with that in mind, and in order to appreciate the role of stress to health, it's important to understand just what this biological response entails, exactly what our body experiences when it becomes stressed. First, two key events occur simultaneously. One is the release of stress hormones, and the other is direct stimulation of our sympathetic nervous system. The stress hormones that are released with stress are adrenaline and a group of hormones called corticoids. These hormones cause several responses in our body. First, they stimulate sympathetic nervous system. So this part of our nervous system gets activated by two mechanisms, by direct signaling from the brain and through release of these stress hormones. And I'll explain the effects of this on the body in just a moment. Second, stress hormones cause the release of sugar and fat into our bloodstream to provide extra energy. Third, salt and water are retained by the kidneys. So the body holds on to more salt and water in order to increase the volume of blood in our system. This will help create stronger heart pumping and get more oxygen to our cells. And finally, the stress hormones suppress our immune system. Actually, the cells are sent to critical areas and kept in reserve for an expected infection. Now, stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, as I said, occurs directly and occurs in response to the stress hormones. And it produces a variety of effects in our body. First, an increased heart rate and strength of contraction of our heart, so our heart beats faster and stronger. Second, we experience an increase in our blood pressure because our blood vessels tighten up. They constrict. Now this increases how fast our blood flows back to our heart, which in turn increases how strongly our heart pumps. So the net effect is that our blood flows faster. The third effect from stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system is an increase in the workload of the heart, which is actually a side effect of the first two I've already mentioned, the increased heart rate and strength of contraction and the increased blood pressure. They come at a cost. In addition, stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system increases the release of endorphins, which are chemicals in our body that reduce our perception of pain and give us a positive feeling, almost a euphoria. And finally, sympathetic nervous system stimulation causes our pupils to dilate, which increases our vision, even in the dark. In the medical world, this response is referred to as the general adaptation syndrome. In addition, there are several other biological responses that occur in response to stress. These include our airways opening up more and our breathing becoming shallow and fast, all to provide more oxygen to our muscles. Second, our muscles tense to prepare for action. Our blood clotting increases to prevent bleeding. Our senses become more acute. We sweat more to flush waste and cool our body. Our digestion slows due to a decrease in the blood supply to our gastrointestinal tract. And salivation and mucus secretion decrease, and that's what gives us cotton mouth when we're afraid or under stress. Now, all of these things are adaptive responses to acute stress in the short term. If we need to run away from danger, these changes in our body will help us do that. If we're seriously injured, these changes in our body will help save our life until medical treatment can be rendered. But for many people in our modern day society, being in a stress state has become a chronic phenomenon. Many people are living in a stress state for prolonged periods of time. So how does this continuous or chronic stress affect our body? In a nutshell, chronic stress kills. I've listed just some of the major and well-known health consequences of chronic stress. And as you can see, they include everything from heart disease and stroke to being vulnerable to more infections because of an ineffective immune system, to depression and cancer. Living in a state of chronic stress also aggravates any chronic disease that a person has, and it increases sensitivity to further stress. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So it's crucial to recognize the serious health effects of being in a chronically stressed state. To be healthy, it is vital to find a way to avoid or end being in a state of chronic stress. But how? First, it's crucial to identify the sources of stress in our daily lives. One of the most common in our American society is time demands. Between work hours, meeting family needs, and personal needs, most people are running an almost constant race, and that puts our body in a state of chronic stress. People can also be a source of stress, and this includes not only the people we may work with, our supervisors, co-workers, or employees, but also our family and friends, and even ourselves. Third, fulfilling expectations is another significant source of stress for many people. The expectations may be related to fulfilling our roles as a spouse, a parent, an employee, an adult child, a friend, a social group member. The list can go on. And most of us have multiple roles. Our lives have become much more complicated, and fulfilling the demands of all of these roles can be exhausting and stressful. In addition, there are also performance expectations. Are we not only functioning in all of these roles, but how well are we performing in each of them? Are we doing well enough to keep people happy? Well enough to keep our job? Sometimes the performance expectations placed on us can be immense. Emotional expectations can also be a source of stress. Human relationships are complex and dynamic, and meeting the emotional needs of those we care about and who depend on us can become quite a strain, especially if those expectations are unmet or unrealistic, or our lifestyle prevents us from being able to meet those emotional needs. And finally, how many of us experience stress based on our expectations of ourselves? Are we living up to our own standard? Have we accomplished everything we have desired to accomplish on a given day, or in a given year, or by a given age? Many people experience a feeling of dissatisfaction with themselves at least some of the time, and for some, it's much of the time. This can actually be a major source of chronic stress, especially for those who chronically feel like they have failed, or those who participate in what is called negative self-talk, which is telling yourself that you're not good enough or that you've blown it again. Technology is another source of stress in our modern day lives. What was once touted as a means to save time and effort has become a means for non-stop working. Besides the stress of learning to use all of the various forms of technology available in our world now, we are faced with the stress associated with being always on, always plugged in. In fact, this is now considered a serious health hazard for all age groups. Years ago, when a person left work for the day, they did just that. But now the workday never ends, and it invades personal and family time. So the net effect of much of technology is the loss of downtime. And while once if someone called when we were not home or out in the yard, we simply missed the call, and we lived. But now there is a societal expectation that we and everyone else must be always available. There is even a new phobia called nomophobia, and it is the fear of being out of mobile phone contact. And then, of course, there are things like cyberbullying, sexting, and so many other negative aspects of this technological world. Far too many to list. And then there's money, another significant source of stress in our lives. Whether it's how much we make or how much we spend, whether it's medical bills or a car that keeps breaking down, or the now common spending addiction. Financial stress is so common in our society that it's one of the major causes of divorce. And then there's change. Now, change is inevitable in our life, and change can be a wonderful positive in our lives. Finding that right person and getting married, graduating from school, buying a house, having a baby, or getting a promotion. But think about all of those changes. They also all involve stress. Managing the dynamics of living with someone, expectations of what you should do post-graduation, keeping up with a mortgage and managing the upkeep and repairs of owning a home. And I won't even bother listing the stress involved with the blessings of the birth of a child. The fact is, change is stressful. And there are numerous other sources of stress. I've listed several on this slide: inadequate sleep, physical illness, a negative attitude, lack of physical activity, inadequate support. But it's not an exhaustive list. There are far too many to even count. So life is full of stress. But isn't that just normal living? What counts in terms of how well we deal with stress is the balance between the stressors in our lives and the resources available to us to deal with those stressors. So we have a choice: find a way to reduce our stressors or develop strategies to increase our resources to deal with them, or both. In fact, both is probably the healthiest choice. Identifying our stressors can be an extremely effective first step in taking steps to reduce them. Whether it's learning to unplug from technology at 6 p.m. every day, or changing jobs to lessen a long commute that cuts into your family time. There is almost always at least one or more stressors that we could all lessen or remove from our lives. And it's also helpful to identify our resources for dealing with stressors and taking steps to develop more. This slide offers a list of many of the modern approaches to managing stress. Some are healthy strategies, many are not. Self-help strategies in the form of books, videos, and seminars has become a huge business in modern-day America. Are they effective? Some are, and many are not, and actually produce more stress from the money spent and the sense of failure associated with the concept that we are all we need to achieve success in life. It's no surprise that drugs or alcohol are on this list. Achieving an altered state of mind through consumption of drugs or alcohol in order to relieve stress has a long history in almost all societies. But this approach is simply an avoidance tactic, and it often only increases stress in the long run. The results of drug and alcohol use range from drunk driving and the injuries and deaths of innocent victims to outlandish and uninhibited behavior with numerous consequences that often produce more stress when the drugs and alcohol wear off. And over time, when used to manage stress, a pattern of abuse or addiction may develop. The prevalence of substance abuse is immense in our society, and we'll discuss that further in week 5. It may surprise you to see sex on this list, but promiscuous or inappropriate sexual activity is unfortunately a not uncommon response to stress. It provides at least a short respite from the stressors in life, as well as a short-lived high and a physical outlet. Now, healthy marital sex, as God intended it, is actually a great way to manage stress. But as it is often practiced in our society today, it often only leads to further emotional stress. Exercise, on the other hand, can be a very healthy and effective strategy to manage stress. It not only relieves the body of the physical effects of stress, it eases the mind of the stress itself. Regular exercise is one of the best and healthiest strategies for managing stress. But again, moderation is essential. Like anything else, exercise can become an alternative focus to avoid life and its stressors, or even an addiction. At that point, it becomes an unhealthy strategy. Yoga has become a very common strategy for managing stress in our society, and it has innumerable beneficial effects due to both the mental focus and relaxation involved, as well as the physical fitness aspects. For the Christian, it is necessary to consider the compatibility of some of the philosophies or practices involved in the various types of yoga with biblical beliefs. Aromatherapy is a use of scents to reduce stress. Scents such as chamomile and lavender are known to produce relaxation. and little harm can come from the use of aromatherapy other than the cost. I included the term balance on this list because so often one hears that all we need to do is find balance in our lives in order to manage our stress. Unfortunately, the term often is used to imply that we simply must find a way to do more than what is healthy, rather than cutting something out. Transcendental meditation has been offered as an effective approach to managing stress for years. However, for the Christian, it is an unhealthy choice, as it is based on Eastern philosophies and is not compatible with a biblical perspective on life and managing stress. So what are effective stress management strategies from a Christian perspective? Certainly the ones already identified. A healthy marital physical relationship and regular exercise are great choices, but there are also others. For the Christian, Bible study, prayer, and meditation on the Word are highly effective in managing stress. On this slide, I've listed just two of the many scriptural verses that teach us how to deal with stress. And there are so many more. The Bible is full of verses that teach us to turn our stress over to the Lord, and that with the Lord we simply need not be stressed. My personal favorite is Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your path. What is yours? And finally, there is one more biblical approach to managing stress that many may not think of. I've labeled it stewardship of self. We are commanded to take care of ourselves. Through what? Through healthy living. Regular physical activity, a healthy diet, and rest and relaxation. And don't forget the last two listed on the slide that we frequently do not allow ourselves to do, and we all probably need to do much more. Saying no and asking for help. That completes this presentation on the role of stress in health. Please email your instructor with questions or comments.